Welcome to the Gourds and Pomegranates podcast, talking common sense for church communications. Here's Hannah and Joe.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast. For this episode, we thought it would be useful to share a few more tools and resources that we frequently use in our work. Previous episodes have seen us share Trello, Google Docs, Canva, and Coolers. I always really enjoy saying that. So to start us off, Joe, what are the tools and resources you want to share?
Thank you. Well, whilst I am going to mention some specific tools today, strictly speaking, my entry is kind of more of a class of tools because I'm going to talk about password managers. And unlike some of the tools that we've shared before, which are really nice and creative, this is a boring one, but a really important one.
It's important.
Yeah.
It is important.
So if you don't know, password managers are bits of software that help you to manage your passwords. If you couldn't work that out from the words password managers, then I don't know what to tell you. So I'm going to give you some reasons that it's important to use them, as well as describing a little bit about what they do. So the first one, and probably the most important, is that they help to keep your church's sensitive data secure. So they will securely store all of the login credentials, your usernames, passwords, any notes that you want to have, and that will be encrypted. So you will essentially have one strong password which unlocks them and then stores them somewhere so that you can remember them. So that keeps them safe, but it actually even allows you to share your passwords with other people as well. They have that functionality built in so that everyone can access it, but in a way that doesn't compromise security, that isn't writing passwords down on a bit of paper that you could lose, that isn't putting them in a Word document that everyone has access to or something like that. And because they're all stored behind this password, the second benefit is that it saves you time. So you don't have to keep resetting your password every time you try and log into an account of something because it will remember it for you. And most of them will also have an extension or a plugin for the browser you use. So for Chrome or Safari or Firefox, whatever you're using, so that when you go to that website, not only can it tell you, oh, you've got a password for this that I've remembered, but it will actually fill it in and maybe automatically log you in. And although some browsers have this built in, which is better than nothing, generally they're not a particularly secure way of storing the passwords. Because if someone has access to your machine, then they will be able to dig into your preferences and your saved files and find those. So it saves time, helps you to log in your browser, but also most password managers will work across all different devices and platforms as well. So it doesn't matter what browser you're using, it doesn't matter what device you're using, you can access your login details no matter where you are. I will quite often, if I'm out and about and need to log into something, I will look up on my phone what the password is, and I've got that there. So it's all well and good saving these things and keeping them secure. But actually, if you've got a load of really weak passwords, then it's not that secure anyway. So password managers will generally have functionality that helps you to generate some stronger passwords, or at the very least, tell you if the passwords you're using are weak. So the strong passwords, they might look like gobbledygook. Actually, it might just be that they're longer and have a few different words in them. But actually, that makes them a lot more difficult to crack if people are trying to guess your password by brute forcing it using computers to do that. So that's really important. And as part of this, a lot of these services will also analyze all of your existing passwords and tell you which ones you need to change, whether that's because they've been compromised in the past or if they're just too weak. Some of them will even automate that and do it for you. So I've gone on about the importance of a strong password. But a really important feature is that these password managers can also provide two-factor authentication. So those can sound like quite scary words if you don't know what they mean. I'll try and describe it in the simplest way possible. Two-factor authentication, sometimes called multi-factor authentication, so 2FA or MFA. And it's essentially a security process which requires you as a user to have an additional form of identification before you can log in. So you type your password in, and then it asks you to verify that it is you logging in. So some weaker ways of doing this might be where you get a text message or even an email where you have to put in a code or confirm a link. But there are stronger ways which these apps provide where the app gives you a list of codes for the different services. And so you open that up when you're logging in and you type in that code. That's much stronger than a text message, which could potentially be hacked as well. And because these codes can be locked behind your fingerprint or your face scan, that also makes it really much more difficult for people to gain access to your passwords. They can also highlight phishing scams as well. So if you click on a link, which is someone trying to trick you into putting your login details into a site that's pretending to be something else, they can recognize those things and flag it up. And actually, the last point really is that they're cost effective. So most of them offer a free plan. If you do have the paid plans and if you need the features, so sometimes like sharing it across multiple people, like you might on your church team, is a paid feature, but generally they're not too expensive. And it gives you peace of mind as well for all of the services that you're using, for all of your staff and volunteers, that they are actually being sensible with the security. As important as a password manager is, and a good password manager, even with two-factor authentication, it's not enough to say that your church is completely secure, but it's definitely a good step in the right direction. And it's something that you can do to strengthen the security of all of the things that you're involved with your church comms within your church. But it also makes your life so much easier. So a couple of examples. I personally use LastPass a lot, but I'm currently looking at Keeper and moving over to there because they have some different features that LastPass doesn't. And it's also slightly cheaper. There's also 1Password and Dashlane. They come really well recommended. They all have fairly similar features. So it's a case of looking and seeing which is the best one for you and where you sort of get the bang for the buck for the features that you need. But yeah, get a good password manager and become a bit more secure in the way that you're working, and that will help everyone.
Yeah.
So, Hannah, what are you going to be talking about today?
Well, mine is less serious, it feels. I've kind of picked, I don't know, for me, it's more of a fun one. So I currently have quite a few filming projects coming up, going on, and I've been spending a lot of time in my video editing suite, I suppose you'd kind of call it. And I thought it might be quite good to share some of the video editing recommendations that I have. And, you know, if you've not put together any videos before, this can be really scary, but there are some really amazing tools and affordable, amazing tools that can make it so much easier.
Great. That's definitely more fun than my suggestion.
Yeah. So the first one is iMovie. So iMovie is a really, really good basic editing tool. You won't necessarily find all the features that a professional editing program will give you. But honestly, that's kind of the point. It's a great way of getting started, and it will be more than likely that it will have all those features that you really need if you're editing, you know, either sermons or just sort of short little promo videos for your church, or sort of little testimonial videos. I mean, it gives you everything that you need to do basic video editing. You can go in having never edited before and just sort of drag and drop files from your computer, or even you can have the apps on your tablet or phone so that actually you can do editing sort of on those devices as well. You can split videos, join them together, reorder, and it's all in a really easy to use interface that actually isn't at all overwhelming, and it's sort of quite obvious what all of the buttons and little features do. You know, for the fact it's a software that is free, it really is quite powerful. Though the elephant in the podcast, Joe wrote that, but I really liked it. The elephant in the podcast is that it's only available on Apple devices. So you can use your Mac, iPad, or iPhone, but obviously it's not really too helpful if you don't have an Apple device. And given that actually both of us primarily are Mac users, we didn't want to recommend things that we don't have much experience using. So being the communicators that we are, we reached out on Twitter to some of the other brilliant. Of course we did. It's where I go for I need to find out something, right? I need to ask my Twitter family. But we asked some of the other brilliant church comms people that we know. And some of the tools that came highly recommended were Canva, which, you know, we've mentioned before many times, but actually I've personally not used the film editing suite in it, but loads of people recommended Canva Film Editor, and it's definitely come a long way and is worth a look, especially if you've already got Canva Pro membership. Then there were also suggestions for OpenShot, PowerDirector, Shotcut, and Clipchamp.
They make that as nice and easy to say, don't they?
Yeah, I know. We'll link everything in the episode description. So whilst we can't recommend these tools from first-hand experience, they come from people who have used them to edit films and videos for their churches. So they are worth exploring. Hopefully this gives you at least some ideas of simple editing programs that you can use to get started. But what if you want to try something a little bit more advanced? So whilst we can personally recommend either the Adobe Premiere Pro or Apple Final Cut, you know how we love a bargain here on Gourds and Pomegranates. So I have to say, this has been my personal one. I love recommending DaVinci Resolve. I was using iMovies for quite a while and was very happy with it, but I thought, actually, what's the next one that I should be using without paying an arm and a leg to get Premiere Pro? So I downloaded DaVinci Resolve as a bit of a chance, and honestly, I love it. And I do try and recommend people to go up as soon as they can. If you're wanting to make reasonably, actually, it's not even reasonable, if you want to make pretty good quality films, this is an amazing tool.
Yeah, so a little bit of background is that DaVinci Resolve is a tool by a professional video company, but they chose to make it free to people. And it's amazing what's provided for free.
Yeah. And actually they make cameras as well, so they understand both sides of filming and then editing it. So the software is made by the creators, and equally the cameras are made by the people that are doing it the other end of the project.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it is a heftier piece of software and does require a fairly good computer, but honestly, the capabilities are brilliant. And as Joe said already, like, it's used by proper big movie teams, though I don't think they have the free version. You know, there have been big Hollywood films made using this editing suite. One of the big things I love is that you can change the screen size. So obviously most videos will be in 16:9, typical landscape format, but actually within DaVinci Resolve, I can create videos in portrait format so they look better on mobile or social media. I can still use the same footage, just need to kind of fiddle with that and edit that out slightly. It's just presented differently, and it looks so much better when you're on that device rather than it just being a sort of 16:9 with the sort of two monster black bars on the top and the bottom. But then you can also create or use it for color grading, audio adjustments. It does loads of brilliant features for either raising someone speaking, reducing background noise, adding lots of different elements to it. Transitions are amazing without being too cheesy, that some of the ones in iMovie can be if you're wanting to just make it look a little bit more professional. And then when it comes to exporting, you can do it in a couple different file sizes, formats, and actually where you end up putting it is so much easier than just directly straight onto your computer if you don't have the space for it. It is quite overwhelming to start with, and definitely worth finding a couple of creators on YouTube who are sort of specifically talking about DaVinci Resolve. There is just so much help on various different aspects if you just search getting started or something specific, noise problems or whatever. There's so much help out there.
I think this is one of the things where we are recommending tools, obviously, that we use, but actually they're really great tools that lots of people use.
Yeah.
And so because of that, because this software, for example, DaVinci Resolve, because it's so amazing, thousands and thousands of people use it, and there are loads of tutorials available for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I remember I bought Final Cut Studio when I was a student. It was ludicrously expensive. This was before software subscriptions, which, as terrible as they are, at least you can kind of try it out for a month or two. And it took hours to install. There was about 10 different DVDs that you had to put in to install it. And when I opened it up for the first time, I just felt like crying because I did not know where to start.
Yeah.
And not only were there not the tutorial videos available at that time, but I also didn't have anything to work on. I had the software, and it was like a blank piece of paper when you're staring at that. Like, how do I actually use it? What am I using it for?
Yeah. And I think that, I suppose that's with everything now, is because so many people are using different pieces of software and tools and stuff. There is so much help. I mean, that's why YouTube is such a wonderful space for finding knowledge. And then there's loads of forums of other people asking questions and sort of community support. I'd say using it, get familiar with the key areas that you really need to use, and then slowly try out new areas or new features as you get more comfortable with it. It is a book quite overwhelming, but actually once you kind of just understand the way that it's laid out, it does make it a little bit easier. But regardless of what editor you choose to use, one of the big things I'd say when starting to try out a new software, or even when trying out a new social media platform, is to play about with it. Have a little kind of test project to give yourself time and space to make videos rather than jumping into what, could possibly be quite a complicated piece of software when you have an important deadline to hit.
Yeah, definitely.
I like having little side videos that I make of either kind of day trips out, clips from holidays, or something that I find pretty, such as walks along my local beach. And I play around with the editing of the video without the pressure of it being a client work. And I've then spent ages editing it, or sort of just playing around with the editor, and actually not really got much out of it. But I have found those helpful in the long run of my actual editing for work.
Absolutely. So there we are. Get creative, editing some videos, get a little bit more secure with a password manager, and let us know how you got on.
Yep.
And remember, you can always head to www.gppodcast.uk, where you'll find a link to get in touch with us, as well as all the ways that you can subscribe to the podcast. So it's the easiest place to send people if you want to recommend the podcast to them. So tell your friends, and we'll be back with another episode next week.